Hi, this is Ben Schwellen, and today I'm talking about how the Greek language influenced English over the course of its history, especially the mythology and the Greek gods and goddesses. To know when and how the Greek language influenced English, we have to know what English is. When did the English language begin? Well, as someone who's looked at Old English and Modern English, I can say certainly these are two different languages. Old English had a case system like Latin and German do. English today does not, and so in many cases you would not have any idea what the other was speaking about. In addition to that, Modern English has Greek loanwords. Approximately 6% of the words that we use every day come from Greek. You add on the medical terminology, scientific speak, and that's approaching up to 10% of the words in English come from Greek. That's a lot. And so these two languages, I'm calling Old English a language separate from English. I'm calling Old English Saxon, because it is a different language from English. Even though they themselves called themselves English, I don't consider it Old English. It's a different language. So beginning with English. So where do we begin? The cosmos. This word came into English around 1200, when English began to, be English. Because Saxon is a different language than English. You can't have 30% of your words coming from French or Latin, and before it didn't, without actually being a different language. So this is the point where we begin with Greek and English. Cosmos came into English from German, which had adopted it from Greek, and this route via another language is how many of our words from Greek come into English. Cosmos literally means order, a good orderly arrangement. You get words stemmed off this like cosmetic for makeup, because when a woman does her face, she's putting it in order. And that cosmos, that idea, it's a very philosophical idea in many ways. And this influence of philosophy is where a lot of the early words of Greek came from into English, but also words for astronomy related things, astrological. Galaxy, for instance, came from Galaxius, and it's interesting that you had that X in there, because in Welsh it's Galaeth, which they would have heard that in Welsh as being a TH. So the word for galaxy in Greek came into these islands and influenced Welsh into English in a very similar way through Latin, and they would have adopted it in a very similar way through learned. But as the French language really dominated England during this period, the words coming into English from Greek were through French. Music, muse, these came into English from the concept of the muses, these minor deities in Greek mythology. Music means the art of the muses from Greek. Philosophy was a new idea. It came into English around the year 1300. And this PH at the beginning is very telling. The overwhelming majority of words in English which begin with PH come from a Greek root somewhere. But when English really begins to absorb words from Greek at a faster rate is when it begins to build a canon of literature that's separate from Saxon and more what we would consider English. And that came with Chaucer, who was writing towards the end of the 14th century. His tales take in a lot of words from foreign sources. He didn't have, we don't think, knowledge of Greek itself, but he drew on Greek literary ideas, which inadvertently created influence of Greek in English. He was the first to use the word nymph in English, which is a minor nature deity, a minor goddess in Greek literature that are related to certain spots in nature. He brings us the word elixir, which came to English via Arabic, which took it from Greek. You get meters of poetry, hexameter, which are found in Chaucer. This word is meaning 6 meter. Cholera, the disease, you brought this in. You have Arctic. Arctic comes from Greek Arctikos, which literally means of the north. It was first used by Chaucer. This is Greek. And a lot of these are words for things that wouldn't have been found in England. They had to reach out and find new concepts. They could have built words with the bolts and nuts of their own language, but they began taking it from other languages. You'll notice, going back to the nymph, that this combination YMPH, it's quite strange, this combination. And you'll find a lot of words in English. One of the reasons why people find English so difficult is you get combinations of letters which seem really weird. Some words in English have no vowels at all. WRY, that doesn't come from Greek, but you get the idea. Crypt is a Greek word. CRYPT, there's no vowels. I wouldn't have any idea how to pronounce that if I was coming from Polish or Spanish. How would you do it? You have these words which are very indicative of being from Greek because of certain consonant clusters, and I want to show you a few of those now. Many of those words I've just showed you are from later stages of English, but even in this earlier period of English, you get words with noticeably fewer vowels, like etymology. You have these two Y's in it. Etymology came into English from Old French via Latin, which came from Greek. What etymology means is the facts of a development of the origin of a word. So even to study their own language, the English came up with the idea from a Greek concept, etymology. For the next century or two, the ideas which came from Greek came directly from Greek via Latin, often via French. But around the Renaissance, that began to change. You had people becoming learned and studying Greek itself. As the Bible was translated, Greek was needed, and they began to be able to familiarize themselves with different pieces of Greek to form new words out of linguistic concepts in the Greek language. One of the most famous here is this guy Thomas More and his book Utopia, which literally means nowhere. That this perfect society he described in his book was nowhere, and to create this idea he went to the roots of the Greek language. Latin during the Renaissance was a rediscovery of classical learning and a solid tradition. Going back to Greek was not just that, however. It was a statement that we have a new source. We can do something else. We can be another group. And so people like this Thomas More fellow and others who went back to Greek were actually making quite a political statement that they didn't want to go along the classic route of Latin. They wanted to go for Greek and create new words as a way to say, we're actually doing something new. It's not Latin. Ironic that they went back to Greek. They were still seeing it as something quite new by using Greek. And in this Renaissance period, as English explorers began venturing outward into parts of the world they never had before, they had to come up with new ideas. Geography, to describe the new land, the concept of studying new lands even, and zoology, to even study the new animals found in these regions. Utopia geography, and zoology all share the common trait that they were not Greek words, but words composed of different Greek elements to invent a new word and meaning. Compound classical words. And we get more and more of these as we go forward. The word Bible comes from biblion, a scroll that you'd roll out and read in the Greek language. English translations of the Bible, and Welsh ones at that, from 1528 to 1611, used Greek. And you also get words in the Bible which come from Hebrew, but we wouldn't have been able to get them into English without going through Greek first, like Pharaoh and paradise. These are sound-shifted words that altered the structure of those two words from Hebrew into Greek, and then English took the Greek versions of these words and not the Hebrew version. The 16th century really sees a growth of words adopted around scholarly learning, comedy as well, irony, alphabet, drama, elegy, chorus, epic, critic, theory. And so these words are becoming more and more academic over time, but they're also tied to the arts, and this is when Shakespeare comes in and gives us words like mimic. We don't think that Shakespeare knew Greek, but he was very aware of the literature and the theater element that produced a lot of the early Greek dramas. And inadvertently, maybe accidentally, he brought in a lot of these into English. Words used a lot in his dramas, like sympathy, have Greek roots, as does the concepts of several genres of dramas. And whilst Shakespeare doesn't really allude directly to Greek mythology or use many Greek words, his invention of new words like mimic did mimic how the Greek language constructs words. And so by this point, people were using the Greek language to invent words in English even though they weren't aware that they were using Greek. But as we move into the late 1600s and into the 1700s, that really changes a lot. You get people who are aware of classical education and classical mythology, creating words like pandemonium. Panic comes from panique, French, which came from panikon, the Greek god who caused fear in herds, giving us pandemonium and panic. You had orchestra as well, clinic, dogma, museum, to go back to the muses. And this was really the height of the Romantic Age in the early 1800s, and this gave us the word myth, from mythos. That's a Greek word. And at this point, people are very aware of what they're doing in connection to myths related to the ancient and classical Greek world. Here are just a few words which directly come from Greek myths and Greek deities themselves, their names actually being brought forth to mean different words in English today. Atlas. We think of this as something that we use to see the world, a book. This was a titan, a mythological Greek figure who held the firmament upon his shoulders. The word for cloth comes from klothos, who was one of the fates who wedded and spun the thread of life through the fabric of the world itself. Here, I'll show you 7 of those. Just 7 of these ancient deities which we took in that classical or neoclassical period of English to reshape new words. Just after this period, you get a painter called John William Waterhouse. He's one of my favorite painters. And he gets back in touch during the kind of post-Romantic period in the late 19th century with this classical antiquity, the mythology of this. And here are just a few paintings. This is Hypnos. And this gave us hypnosis, hypnotic. And he's a personification, a minor deity, a minor god of sleep. He painted lots of nymphs and got into contact with looking back toward antiquity in that way. And a lot of English during the late Victorian era and the early Edwardian era were people using Greek at posh universities and showing off that they had knowledge of it, and then using that as an English word to describe a concept like erotic. Most of the Greek that you're probably familiar with today is more medical based, and the influence of Greek in English is largely academic, to use a Greek word, but we do have lots of influence, and it's a rich part of what makes the English language what it is. I think what I like most about the influence of Greek upon English is that mythology element, that we used personification of concepts like hypnos, convey new concepts, hypnosis, erotic, and it does make English a bit rich in that sense if you know where the words come from. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to leave me a comment or you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk with you about that in the comments below, and we will see you in the next episode. Diolch, thank you.